Equustria's First Prank Call by Japanese Teeth.
It's finished!
Twilight bellowed, her voice echoing dramatically through the basement of the library. Behind her, a pair of antennae crackled with electricity, sending bolts of impressive yet relatively harmless lightning through the air. Despite the wings, she had never felt it so appropriate to indulge herself in the Royal Canterlot voice.
It is complete!
Huh? The door at the top of the stairs swung open with a creak, and Spike poked his head in. One of his claws held a pillow, the other rubbed his eyes. "What's all the racket, Twilight?" he grumbled. "I'm trying to sleep."
Trying to sleep?
Twilight stared up at him, switching instantly from slightly unhinged scientist mode to surrogate family member mode.
In the middle of the day? If you nap now, you'll never get to sleep tonight.
"I'm only napping because you kept me up until 4 in the morning last night, untangling wires for that, thing." Spike pointed to the device that Twilight had been cackling over. It resembled nothing more than a wooden box with various oddities sticking out of it. There was a crank and 2 odd trumpet-like protrusions, one set directly on the front of the box, and one attached by a length of thick wire that hung against the side of the box on a hook. At the bottom of the contraption was some sort of overly large rotary dial, and at the top was what looked like a miniature school bell.
Oh, right.
She glanced at the clock and did some quick mental gymnastics that told her she had been working more or less non-stop, excepting bathroom breaks, of course, for the past 13 hours. She suddenly felt a little tired, but the fatigue was overwhelmed by her excitement and the 3 pots of coffee and a half she had limbed during her work.
It was totally worth it, though. Without your help, I could never have completed this.
She mentally kicked herself for not having a sheet over it to whip off. Instead, she pointed at it with as much drama as she could muster. "Yeah," Spike said, flatly, unimpressed by the florist. "What is it?"
This is a revolution to pony communication.
There were stars in Twilight's eyes as she rubbed her hooves together in anticipation.
With this device, ponies will be able to speak to one another from the opposite ends of Equstria. Even if one is in Manhattan and the other is in Las Pegasus, they'll be able to talk as if they were in the same room. Want to hear how it works?
"Not really, but you're probably going to tell me anyway." Spike sat and put his pillow behind his head. If Twilight was going to lecture him, he might as well be comfortable.
See, what happens is that you'll have ponies who all have one of these in their house.
Twilight levitated the box and began to head up the stairs, someplace where it'll be convenient for them. As she searched the top of the stairs, she looked back over her shoulder.
"Spike, are you coming?"
Spike, who had just finished settling in, sighed and stood up. "Yeah, I'm coming." He shuffled up the stairs, and by the time he emerged, Twilight had already hung her invention on the wall.
See, every pony will have one of these. So, say you want to talk to some pony else, like, oh, I don't know, Rarity?
Twilight punctuated the name with a wink. Spike just glowered.
Every one of them will have a number. All you need to do is put their number into it.
She pantomimed, spinning the dial.
And it will make this ring.
She poked the bell with her hoof.
Then she would pick this up.
She snatched the dangling horn thing off of its hook and held it to her ear.
To listen, and you can talk into this other one, and you'd be able to talk to each other just like that. I call it...
She paused, her hoof on her chest.
"The lunchbox."
"Huh, that's pretty cool," Spike said, finally beginning to allow himself a bit of enthusiasm. "I mean, if it's just some pony in town, you might as well just go talk to her, but if you need to talk to some pony in Canterlot or something, it could be pretty useful. Saves me the trouble of having to hork up scrolls all the time."
"I know."
Twilight clapped her hooves.
"Aren't you just dying to know how it works?"
Not really."
See, what happens is that turning the dial here sends a series of magical charges along the wire that tells the device where to send the call. Then, when you start talking, there's a specially calibrated membrane that picks up the sound vibrations and transforms them back into a magical current that travels along the wire to another lunchbox where it's converted back into the sound with a speaker. Right now, we're limited by the wires, but the magical projection may eventually remove the need for...
She paused for breath, and Spike jumped in. Yeah, that's really cool and interesting and whatever, but there's one problem."
"Problem?"
Twilight cocked her head to the side.
"What problem? I spent all night double, triple, and quadruple checking all the connections. There's no reason why it wouldn't work. What problem is here?"
"The problem is that you can't call any pony with your long... whatever unless they have one too. And I'm pretty sure that right now, you have the only one." Twilight stared at Spike, then at the lunchbox, then back to Spike. Then she face-hoofed.
"Oh, why didn't I think of that? Now I'm going to have to build another one to test it."
"Well, you might want to get some sleep first," Spike said. He started for the stairs, dragging his pillow after him. "That's what I'm doing."
"That might be a good idea,"
Twilight muttered, half to Spike and half to herself. She knew intellectually, at least, that she was fatigued, even if the coffee in her veins made her feel mostly awake and alert. She'd have to take a nap, then get to work on another lunchbox, so she could actually make a call. that would certainly be a historic occasion. For the first time in equestrian history, one pony would talk to another pony from miles away without the need to cast complicated magic. Truly, it would be a momentous occasion that would go down in the record books. Then, the lunchbox rang. Twilight blinked and rubbed her eyes. For some reason, thinking it would clear up her hearing, the lunchbox rang again.
How?
Twilight muttered, to no one in particular. It wasn't even hooked up to anything. It was physically impossible that some pony could be calling it. The bell was probably malfunctioning. It rang again. Her curiosity began to overcome her skepticism. It was probably malfunctioning, but she ought to at least attempt to confirm that. She plucked the speaker off of its hook and held it up to her ear. Against all expectations, she heard a sound, not just the buzzes and clicks of the machine itself, but there was a voice, and it was giggling? "Hello?" she said. There were a few snorts of stifled laughter, and then a familiar voice.
Is your refrigerator running?
Huh?
Is your refrigerator running?
Twilight rolled her eyes, now quite certain who it was on the other end of the line. Nonetheless, she felt compelled to check. She gently set the speaker on the top of the lunchbox and poked her head into the kitchen. The fridge hummed slightly, but then again, it always did that. It was how she knew it was working. She returned to the lunchbox and picked up the speaker.
Yes, my refrigerator is running just fine. Well,
said Pinky, on the verge of bursting into laughter.
In that case, you'd better go catch it!
There was a half second of reckless laughter, then a loud click, and then silence. Twilight stood still for a moment, then slammed the speaker back onto its hook. Pinky, she growled, the nerve of that pony. Leave it to her to hijack the dawn of a new era of pony-to-pony communication for the sake of a bad pun. Despite the caffeine, Twilight's fatigue surged over her. She was going to go upstairs, sleep for a few hours, and then have a word with Pinky, and then possibly ask for her help. If she had somehow managed to hook herself into the lunchbox, she obviously had a strong understanding of the underlying principles. As she ascended the stairs towards her bedroom, Twilight heard an odd sound. It sounded not unlike hoofbeats, which was ridiculous. There was no one else around but Spike, and he was both hoofless and asleep. What's more, the sound seemed to be coming from the kitchen, which made no sense, and now the noise was getting louder. Twilight sighed and turned around. Pinky had probably decided to raid the kitchen while she was around. Pinky's shenanigans were the last thing Twilight wanted to deal with, but she might as well get it over with. She walked to the kitchen and reached for the door handle. Then, the door burst open and something leaped over her head. She spun around and saw, bounding over her table with the grace of a gazelle, a four-legged refrigerator. It pawed at the library floor with what looked like the leg of some sort of ungulate, spun around, and ran out the door. Twilight had to sit down. Then, she threw her head back and screamed, shaking her hooves at the ceiling. Pinky!